The handbit shook as it dropped out of hyperspace. Warning lights flashed across every console. Young Tay gripped the controls, fighting to stabilize the ship as reality reasserted itself around them. 6 days of hard travel had brought them to the edge of the Velrithia system, and what they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The viewing screen showed a graveyard. Debris floated in orbital paths around the planet, pieces of ships and stations that had been torn apart. Some of the wreckage was still burning, small fires that would burn until their fuel was exhausted in the vacuum of space. Further in, near the planet itself, the Krell fleet moved like predators circling wounded prey. Day stood behind Young Tae's chair, his hands gripping the armrests. His face showed nothing, but inside his heart was pounding. He had seen Krell attacks before, during his military service. He had seen what they left behind. But seeing it again did not make it easier. "Report," he said, his voice steady. Sunmi worked at her tactical station, her fingers dancing across the controls. Numbers and diagrams filled her screens. "I'm counting 43 Krell vessels, 32 small combat ships, 8 medium cruisers, and 3 large bioships." She paused. "And 1 mothership." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what a Krell mothership meant. It was not just a ship. It was a mobile hive, a living factory that produced more Krell warriors and vessels. It was currently attached to the colony's main habitat dome like a parasite feeding on its host. Bo Young pulled up a scan of the planet's surface. "The colony's shields are completely down. I'm detecting fires across multiple districts, but..." She leaned closer to her screen. "I'm picking up life signs underground. Looks like bunker systems." Day felt something loosen in his chest. "How many?" Hard to tell through the interference. "Maybe 300. Maybe more. They were alive. The Quilvins were still alive." That changed everything. Jinho's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I've got the engines running at 140%. She'll hold together for what we need to do." "Probably." "Probably isn't good enough," Day replied. "It's all we've got." Day looked at the tactical display again. 43 Krell ships, 1 human cargo hauler. The math was impossible. But the math had been impossible before back on Earth, when humans first faced species stronger and faster than them. Humans had never been the strongest. They had never been the fastest. But they were stubborn, and they were good at making impossible math work in their favor. Tae-min, their security officer, entered the bridge. He was 37, built like a tank, and moved with the confidence of someone who had survived situations that should have killed him. "Strike team is ready. 8 of us for ground operations. 4 staying with the ship." He cracked his knuckles. "When do we go?" "Soon," Day said. He turned to Sunmi. "What are the Krell doing?" "Patrolling, searching. They know there are survivors underground and they're trying to dig them out." She highlighted several areas on the planet's surface. "They have heavy equipment working on the bunker entrances. Best guess they'll break through in maybe 12 hours. 12 hours. That was all the time they had." Day's mind raced through possibilities, discarding plans as quickly as he made them. A direct assault was suicide. A stealth approach was impossible with this many enemy ships. Calling for backup was pointless because no one else was close enough. That left one option. The stupid option, the one that would probably get them all killed. "Here's what we're going to do," Day said. "Young Tae, you're going to fly us straight at them. Full speed, all weapons firing. Make them think we're a military ship that came alone to save the day." Young Tae grinned. "Finally, someone speaks my language. The Krell will send everything they have to intercept us. While they're focused on the handbit, we drop the strike team. They land near the bunker, get the survivors, and get to the extraction point. We'll make a second pass to pick them up." Sunmi raised an eyebrow. "And when the Krell realize we're not a military ship? When they realize it's a trap? Then you'll need to keep them busy," Day said. "Think you can do that?" She smiled, cold and sharp. "I can try." Bo Young was already adjusting the plan on her console. "Extraction point Delta. It's the closest flat area to the bunker entrance. Heavy Krell presence, but manageable. Maybe. Maybe seems to be our favorite word today," Young Tae muttered. Day activated the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going in. Strike team to the drop bay. Everyone else battle stations. This is going to get rough." The crew moved like a machine. Hay-1 sealed the medical bay and strapped down all the equipment. Young Sik distributed weapons to the strike team, checking each piece personally. Jinho rerouted power from non-essential systems to weapons and shields, giving the Hanbit every advantage he could squeeze from the old ship. In the drop bay, Day suited up with the strike team. The armor was military grade, scavenged and modified over the years. It was black and gray, built to absorb impacts and regulate temperature. The helmet's display showed vital signs, ammunition counts, and tactical information. Day had worn armor like this 100 times before, but it never felt normal. It felt like preparing for death. Beside him, Taemin loaded his rifle with smooth, practiced movements. Haewon checked her medical supplies one final time, even though she had checked them 3 times already. Young Sik was talking quietly to his team, going over hand signals and rally points. The intercom crackled. "Strike team, this is the bridge. 60 seconds to drop point." Day sealed his helmet. "Everyone ready?" Heads nodded. No one spoke. Words were not needed now. The Hanbit accelerated toward the Krell fleet. On the bridge, young Tae was pushing the ship to its limits. Warning alarms screamed as the engines redlined. Sunmi's weapons opened fire, sending streams of plasma and missiles toward the nearest Krell vessels. The attack was aggressive, loud, and exactly what Day wanted. The Krell responded immediately. Combat ships broke from their patrol routes and turned toward the Hanbit. The larger vessels began charging their weapons. The entire fleet's attention focused on this single human ship that had dared to challenge them. "They're taking the bait," Sunmi reported. 30 vessels inbound on our position." "Good," Day replied over the comm. "Keep them interested." The Hanbit shook as Krell weapons fire began hitting their shields. Young Tae twisted the ship through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a vessel this size. The Krell followed, drawn away from the planet, away from the survivors hiding below. "Strike team, drop in 10 seconds, Bo Young announced. In the drop bay, the floor beneath Day's feet opened. Below, he could see the planet's surface rushing up at them. The colony was burning. Smoke rose from destroyed buildings. Krell warriors moved through the streets like ants. 5 seconds. Day's heart hammered in his chest. He thought about the Quilvans in the bunker, waiting for death. He thought about Tyson, who had sent that desperate message into space. He thought about the 3,000 civilians who had lived here before the Krell came. 3 seconds. This was what humans did. This was why Earth had joined the galactic community. Not to conquer, not to take, but to stand between the monsters and the innocent. To answer calls that others ignored. Drop. The floor disappeared. Day and his team fell into the burning sky. 8 armored figures plummeting toward a war zone. The Hanbit banked away above them, leading the Krell fleet on a deadly chase through space. The wind screamed around Day as he fell. His armor system stabilized his descent, adjusting his angle, calculating impact. The ground came closer, closer. He could see individual Krell warriors now, could see their weapons and their terrible insect-like faces. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Day hit the ground hard enough to crack the pavement. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but he still felt it in his bones. Around him, the rest of the strike team landed in a rough circle, each one creating their own small crater. For a moment, everything was still. Dust hung in the air. The Krell paused in their searching, confused by these new arrivals. Then Day stood up, raised his rifle, and the confusion ended. The battle began. The first Krell warrior died before it understood what was happening. Day's rifle barked 3 times, precise shots that punched through the creature's armored head. It collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, green blood pooling beneath it. Around him, the rest of the strike team opened fire in a coordinated pattern that came from years of training and trust. The Krell reacted with animal fury. They were each the size of a small vehicle, with 6 legs ending in razor-sharp points and upper limbs that could tear through metal. Their heads were mostly mouth, filled with teeth designed to crush and consume. They had conquered 100 worlds. They did not fear anything, but fear was not required for death. Taemin moved like violence made flesh. A Krell charged him, and he waited until the last possible second before stepping aside and firing his shotgun into the joint, where the creature's leg met its body. The limbs separated. The Krell stumbled. Taemin put another shot through its brain before it hit the ground. Young Sik had taken position behind a destroyed vehicle, using it for cover as he fired controlled bursts from his rifle. He did not waste ammunition. Each shot had a purpose. Each bullet found a target. 2 Krell fell trying to reach him, their bodies blocking the path for those behind. HFY was not a soldier, not primarily. She was a medic, but she had been trained, like all military personnel, to fight when needed. Her rifle bucked against her shoulder as she laid down suppressing fire, forcing the Krell to take cover, buying time for her team to advance. The strike team moved forward in a tactical formation that they had practiced hundreds of times. 2 would advance while others provided covering fire, then those 2 would take position and cover the next pair. It was slow, methodical, and effective. The Krell had numbers, but humans had discipline. Day led them toward the bunker entrance, which was 100 meters away through a maze of destroyed buildings and abandoned vehicles. His helmet's display showed the route in glowing lines, updated in real time as the tactical computer calculated the safest path. But there was no truly safe path. There were Krell everywhere and more were coming. "Contact right," someone shouted. A group of 5 Krell warriors emerged from a collapsed building, their movements coordinated, showing intelligence that made them more dangerous. They had learned to work together. They had adapted. That was what made the Krell so terrifying. They learned quickly. The strike team responded instantly. Jinho threw a grenade that exploded in a flash of light and shrapnel. The Krell scattered, and in that moment of chaos the humans struck. Precise fire from multiple angles. The Krell could not defend against attacks from all directions. Within seconds, all 5 were dead. But the noise had attracted more. Day could see them converging on their position from all sides. Dozens of Krell warriors, abandoning their search of the colony to deal with these new threats. Good, Day thought. Every Krell focused on us is one not trying to break into the bunker. Keep moving, he shouted. Don't stop. They ran through the ruins, fighting as they went. The Krell were faster on open ground, their 6 legs giving them terrifying speed. But the humans used the terrain, ducking through narrow passages where the larger Krell could not easily follow, using destroyed vehicles for cover, turning the battlefield to their advantage. A Krell dropped from a rooftop directly onto Young Sik. Its weight drove him to the ground. Its jaws opened to bite down on his helmet. Then Taemin was there, driving a combat knife into the creature's eye. The Krell thrashed wildly. Young Sik rolled away. Taemin pulled his knife free and stabbed again, and the Krell went still. Thanks, Young Sik gasped. Move, Taemin replied, already scanning for the next threat. The bunker entrance was 50 meters away now. Day could see it through the smoke and dust, a heavy metal door set into the ground. The Krell had been working on it with some kind of acid sprayer. The metal was pitted and weakened, but still holding. Bo Young, you there? Day called over the comm. Her voice came back crackling with static. We're here. Krell are keeping us busy. How's the ground situation? Busy, Day replied. We're almost at the bunker. How long until pickup? The Hanbit is engaged with multiple Krell cruisers. Best estimate 30 minutes until we can break away for extraction run. 30 minutes. They had to hold the bunker entrance for 30 minutes against an army of Krell warriors. Day did not allow himself to think about whether that was possible. He simply accepted it as the situation and adapted. Copy that. 30 minutes. We'll be ready. They reached the bunker entrance and immediately set up a defensive perimeter. Young Sik placed automated turrets that Jinho had modified from their cargo handling equipment. They would not last long, but they would help. HFY positioned herself where she could reach anyone who got injured. Taemin took the most exposed position because that was who he was. Day approached the bunker door and pounded on it with his armored fist. Open up, we're here to help. There was no response at first. Then a voice, weak and frightened, filtered through a speaker. How do we know you are not Krell? They have used tricks before, Day understood. The Quilvans had been hunted for days. They had every reason to be suspicious. My name is Captain Day, I'm human. We received your distress call. We came to get you out, silence. Then humans? You came? But you are so far away. We thought, we came. Now open the door. We don't have much time. There was the sound of mechanisms moving. The heavy door began to open slowly, its damaged system struggling. As it opened, Day saw what was inside. Quilvans, dozens of them, pressed together in the darkness. They looked up at him with multiple eyes that showed fear and hope in equal measure. They were so fragile. Their bodies were thin, almost delicate. Their skin was translucent, showing the bioluminescent organs beneath. They looked like they would break if handled roughly. Looking at them, Day understood why they had never developed weapons. why they had never learned to fight. They were not built for violence, but humans were. A young Quilvan pushed forward through the crowd. Day's helmet identified it as Rilpa based on the colony records they had downloaded. It held a translation device in its trembling appendages. "You are really here. You really came to save us." "We came," Day confirmed. "How many people are down there?" Rilpa spoke to the others in their own language, a sound like wind chimes and distant bells. Then it turned back to Day. 347. Many are injured. Some cannot walk. We have children. We have elders. We cannot fight. You don't need to fight, Day said. You just need to move when we tell you to move. Can you do that? Rilpa translated. The response from the crowd was a chorus of desperate affirmation. Good. Everyone who can walk, start coming up. Everyone who cannot, we will carry you. When we move, you run and you don't stop. Understand? The Quilvans began emerging from the bunker, blinking in the harsh light. They moved slowly, their bodies weakened by days of hiding and fear. Some leaned on others for support. Some carried children in their arms. They looked at the armored humans with a mixture of awe and terror. Day turned to his team. We hold here until the Hanbit can extract us. No one gets past us to these civilians. His team nodded. They understood. They had made an impossible journey to save people they had never met. They were not going to fail now. The Krell came like a tide. They had realized what the humans were doing. They had understood that their prey was escaping. Now they were coming in force to stop it. The first wave hit the defensive perimeter with savage fury. The automated turrets opened fire, cutting down the leading Krell. But there were always more. They climbed over their own dead, driven by instinct to consume and destroy. The strike team fought like people who knew this was their last stand. Rifles barked in steady rhythm. Grenades exploded in bright flashes. The smell of burnt flesh and spilled blood filled the air. The humans gave ground grudgingly, falling back slowly as more Quilvans emerged from the bunker. Day's ammunition counter was dropping fast. He switched to controlled bursts, making every shot count. A Krell warrior broke through the line and charged toward the Quilvan civilians. Hay-1 stepped in its path and emptied her magazine into its chest. It fell 3 meters from the nearest child. "Ammo check," Day shouted. The responses were grim. Everyone was running low. The Krell kept coming. The Hanbit was still engaged in space, unable to break away for pickup. Young Sik's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't hold much longer, Captain." Day looked at the Quilvans. More than half were out of the bunker now, huddled together watching these strange aliens fight and die to protect them. He thought about turning back, about retreating into the bunker and sealing it, about waiting for help that might never come. Then he stopped thinking and started fighting harder, because that was what humans did. They did not quit. They did not abandon people who needed them. They stood between the monsters and the innocent, and they did not move, even if it killed them. The alarm screamed through the mining colony like a dying animal. Dyson's multiple eyes widened as he watched the displays turn red one after another. His thin, translucent fingers shook as he tried to input commands into the communications array. Outside the window, the sky was burning. The Quilvan colony of Velrithia had stood peacefully for 200 years. The people who lived there were scholars, miners, and farmers. They had delicate bodies with skin like frosted glass. They could see in spectrums that other species could not. They could hear the songs of distant stars. But they had never known war. Their bodies were not built for fighting. Their minds were not shaped by violence. Now death had come to their world. The Krell ships descended like massive insects, each one the size of a city block. Their hulls were made of organic armor that seemed to breathe and pulse. Weapons grew from their sides like tumors, firing streams of acid and plasma that melted through the colony's shields. The defensive barriers that had protected Velrithia for generations collapsed in less than an hour. Thyssen watched families running through the streets below. He saw the Krell ground forces emerging from their landing craft, their bodies covered in chitinous plates, their limbs ending in blades that dripped with digestive fluids. The Krell did not conquer. They consumed. They would take everything from this world and leave only bones. His supervisor, an elderly Quilvan named Mescal, stumbled into the communications room. Green blood leaked from a wound on his side. "Send the distress call," he gasped. "Send it now. On all frequencies." Dyson's hands moved across the controls. He knew the truth that Mescal would not say aloud. The nearest coalition military base was 3 weeks away. Even if they sent ships immediately, Belrithia would be dead before help arrived. But perhaps someone else would hear. Perhaps someone closer would answer. He typed the message with trembling fingers. It was simple, desperate, and honest. This is Belrithia mining colony. We are under attack by Krell forces. 3,000 civilians present. Defense is failing. Please, anyone, help us. He pressed the transmit button. The message shot out into space at the speed of light, spreading in all directions, a cry into the void. Thyssen did not know if anyone would hear it. He did not know if anyone would care enough to come. Behind him, an explosion rocked the building. Mescal grabbed his arm. Go to the bunkers now. I will try to keep the array active as long as possible. Thyssen wanted to argue, but another explosion, closer this time, made the decision for him. He ran toward the emergency exits as the communications tower began to fall apart around him. The last thing he saw was Mescal at the controls. Still transmitting, still calling for help. Even as the ceiling came down, 6 light-years away, Captain Day sat in the command chair of the cargo vessel Hanbit. The ship was old but reliable, a converted military transport that now carried supplies to frontier worlds. Day had bought it 5 years ago with money saved from his time in Earth's orbital defense force. He was 42 years old, with short black hair starting to gray at the temples and tired eyes that had seen too many things. His crew was finishing dinner in the galley. They were between jobs, heading toward a station where they hoped to pick up a new contract. It was supposed to be a quiet week. Then the distress call came through. Bo Young, his first officer, was monitoring communications when the message arrived. She was 35, sharp-featured, and efficient. She had served with Day in the military before joining him on the Hanbit. Captain, she called from her station. We're receiving an emergency broadcast. Automated distress signal. It's bad. Day moved to her console. The message played through the speakers, Thyssen's translated voice cracking with fear. When it finished, the bridge was silent. Where? Day asked. Bo Young pulled up the star charts. Velrithia colony. Quilvan settlement. 6 days from our current position at maximum speed. She paused. The Krell are hitting them. Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. The Krell swarm was a nightmare that haunted the frontier. They were biological weapons left over from some ancient war, now spreading across the galaxy like a plague. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply fed. Jin Ho, the chief engineer, had come up from the engine room when he heard the alarm. He was 28, the youngest member of the crew with quick hands and a quicker mind. 6 days, he said quietly. By the time we get there, he did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew. The Quilvans would be dead. The colony would be stripped. There would be nothing left to save. Day stared at the star chart. He thought about the voice in that message, the fear and hope mixed together. He thought about 3,000 civilians who had done nothing wrong except live in the wrong place at the wrong time. He thought about turning away, about being practical, about the fact that they were just a cargo ship with 12 crew members and no military support. Then he stopped thinking and started acting. Bo Young, plot a jump to Velrithia. Fastest route. Jinho, I need the engines ready for combat speeds. I don't care if you have to tear apart half the ship to make it work. He activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We just received a distress call from a colony under Krell attack. We're going to help. Everyone to stations. Prepare for emergency jump. The bridge crew stared at him. Sunmi, his tactical officer, was the first to speak. She was 40, calm and deadly when she needed to be. Captain, we're a cargo hauler. The Krell will have warships. We don't have the firepower for this. I know, Day said. Coalition military is weeks away. We'll be going in alone. I know, we could die. Day looked at her directly. Yes, we could. But those people are dying right now, so we're going anyway. Sunmi held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded and turned to her weapons console. I'll start prepping the armory. Bo Young was already working on the navigation. Jinho had disappeared back to the engine room. Within minutes, the entire crew was moving with purpose. No one argued. No one questioned. They simply did what needed to be done. In the galley, Haiwan, the ship's medic, began converting Cargo Bay 3 into a medical facility. She was 39, gentle in manner but steel underneath. She had served in military field hospitals before joining the Hanbit. She knew they would need space for wounded. Young Sick, their weapons specialist, opened the armory that had been sealed for 3 years. The heavy weapons inside were supposed to be for emergencies only. He figured this qualified. He was 45, stocky, and had the most combat experience of anyone on the crew. He started checking each weapon, making sure they would work when needed. Young Tae, their pilot, was running calculations for the jump. He was 33, lean, and had reflexes that made him the best pilot Day had ever seen. "Captain," he called out, "I can shave 18 hours off the trip if we're willing to risk some dangerous space." "Do it," Day replied without hesitation. The Hanbit's engines began to power up. The old ship started to hum with energy. In 6 days they would arrive at Velrithia. They would face an enemy that outnumbered them. They would fight a battle they could not win, but they would go anyway because someone had called for help. And humans answered calls like that, not with words or promises or diplomacy. They answered with their presence, with their weapons, with their willingness to stand between the weak and the monsters. The Hanbit jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a dying world. 12 humans against an alien swarm. It was madness. It was impossible. It was what they did. The medical station orbiting Kelvar Prime had never seen anything like it. A battered cargo ship emerged from hyperspace, trailing atmosphere and leaking fuel. Its hull was scorched black in places, pitted with acid burns in others. Emergency beacons screamed across all frequencies. The station's traffic control almost denied docking permission until they saw what was inside. 347 Quilvan refugees. 12 human crew members, all alive. The station commander, a Valorian named Kestrel, personally met the Hanbit at the docking bay. His species was known for their calm, measured approach to everything. But when he saw the Quilvans stumbling down the ramp, saw the condition they were in, saw the humans who had saved them still wearing armor covered in dried blood, he felt something crack in his carefully maintained composure. "How?" he asked Day. "How did you get them out?" The report said Velrithia was completely overrun. The Krell had a full fleet there. Day was exhausted. He had not slept in days. His arm was bandaged where the Krell claw had cut through his armor. He just wanted to rest, but he could see the confusion in Castrell's eyes, the need to understand. So he explained, his voice flat and tired. "We went in. We got them. We left. But the Krell were in the way," Day said. "So we went through them." Castrell stared at him. The mathematics of what this human was describing were impossible. 12 individuals against a Krell swarm. It could not be done. Should not have been possible. Yet here they were. The medical team swarmed the Quilvans, guiding them to treatment facilities. Haywan went with them, refusing rest until she had briefed the station's medical staff on everything she had seen. The other crew members dispersed to handle various necessities.
Jinho went with the station's engineers to assess the damage to the Hanbit.
Youngsik began the tedious process of filing reports with the local security forces. Day found himself in a quiet corridor, leaning against a wall, trying to process what they had done. They had saved 347 lives. But 3,000 had lived on Velrithia. The other 2,000 plus were dead. He could not stop thinking about them. Bo Young found him there an hour later. She sat down next to him without saying anything. They had served together long enough that words were not always necessary. She understood what he was thinking because she was thinking the same thing. "We couldn't save them all," she finally said. "I know. We saved who we could. I know. It matters. What we did matters." Day looked at her. "Does it?" Bo Young met his eyes. "Ask them," she said, nodding toward the medical bay where the Quilvans were being treated. "Ask Rilpa if it matters. Ask every parent who still has their child. Ask every child who still has their parents. It matters to them." Before Day could respond, an alarm sounded through the station. Not an emergency alarm, but something else. An announcement. People in the corridor stopped and looked at the displays showing the station's newsfeed. A reporter, a Nexian with blue skin and 4 arms, was speaking rapidly. Behind her, images scrolled past. Images of the Hanbit. Images of the rescue. Images of Quilvans being carried by armored humans through fire and death. "The story is spreading across the galaxy faster than anyone could have predicted," the reporter was saying. "The Quilvan Assembly has released the full details of what happened at Velrithia. A human cargo ship, the Hanbit, responded to the distress call alone. 12 crew members against 43 Krell vessels. The military experts we have spoken to say this should have been impossible, that there is no tactical scenario where 12 individuals could achieve what these humans did. The images changed to show Quilvan officials speaking to assembled crowds. Their words were translated into dozens of languages. And yet they came, one official said, their voice trembling with emotion. When we called out into the darkness, when we prepared for death, they came. Not an army, not a fleet, just 12 people who heard someone needed help. The scene shifted to show coalition military officials being questioned by reporters. They looked uncomfortable, their expressions a mixture of shame and awe. Why didn't the coalition military respond? A reporter asked. The closest fleet was 3 weeks away, an admiral responded. By the time we received the distress call and mobilized, it would have been too late. It was a tragic situation, but there was nothing we could do. The humans were 6 days away, the reporter pointed out. Yet they responded immediately. The admiral had no answer to that. The newsfeed continued, showing reactions from across the galaxy. Some species praised the humans' bravery. Others called them reckless and foolish. Some suggested that Earth's warriors should be recruited for frontier defense. Others worried about giving humans too much military power. But underlying all of it was a new awareness, a new understanding of what humans were. They were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. Their technology was not the most advanced. But they had something else, something that could not be measured or quantified, a willingness to walk into hell for strangers, a refusal to abandon people who needed help, an instinct to protect that ran so deep it overrode survival itself. The galaxy had met Deathworlders before. Species evolved on harsh planets with dangerous conditions. But Earth was different. Earth's dangers had not just made humans strong. They had made humans protective. Pack animals who extended their pack to include anyone who needed protection. Day watched the news feed with growing discomfort. He had not done this for glory or recognition. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. Because someone had called for help. The idea that this was now being analyzed and discussed across the galaxy felt wrong somehow. Captain Day, a voice said behind him. He turned to see Rilpa standing there, no longer wearing the translation device. The station had provided neural translators for all the Quilvans. The young alien looked less terrified now, though still fragile and worn. I wanted to thank you, Rilpa said. I wanted to make sure you knew what you did for us, what it meant. You don't need to thank me, Day replied. Yes, I do. You need to understand. My people, we do not have warriors. We do not understand violence. When the Krell came, we did not know how to respond. We froze, we hid, we waited to die. Rilpa's multiple eyes focused on Day with intensity. Then you came. You did not freeze. You did not hide. You fought for us when we could not fight for ourselves. You were the strength we do not have. Anyone would have done the same, Day said. Rilpa made a sound that the translator interpreted as sad laughter. No, they would not have. The coalition did not come. Our neighboring systems did not send help. They had reasons, certainly. Good reasons. Logical reasons. But they did not come. We were closer, Day said, trying to minimize what they had done. 6 days versus 3 weeks, Rilpa said. Yes, but the coalition knew about the attack for 2 days before you arrived. They could have sent ships from other locations. They chose not to risk it. You chose differently. That choice, Captain Day, that choice is what matters. Before Day could respond, his comm unit chirped. It was Bo Young. Captain, you need to come to the station's administrative center. Now. Day excused himself and made his way through the station. The administrative center was crowded with officials from various species, all talking rapidly. When Day entered, the room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Castrell, the station commander, stepped forward. Captain Day, I have just received word from the Quilvan Assembly. They are formally requesting that humans join their defensive pact. They want Earth's warriors to help protect their frontier worlds. Day blinked. I'm not a military representative. I'm just a cargo hauler. A cargo hauler who saved 347 lives and fought off a Krell swarm, Castrell said. The Quilvans are not the only ones watching this story. 7 other species have made inquiries about human protection services. The coalition military is being flooded with requests for human advisors and trainers. This is getting out of hand, Day said. Is it? Castrell asked. Or is this exactly what the galaxy needs? We have spent centuries building armies and fleets to protect ourselves. But when danger comes, those armies are always too far away, too slow to respond, too cautious to risk themselves. Then humans arrive on the scene. And humans do not calculate risks. They do not wait for approval. They simply go. We went because people were dying, Day said. That's all. Exactly, Kestrel replied. And that is why everyone wants you. Because you go when people are dying. Because you do not need a treaty or an alliance or a payment. You just need to know that someone needs help. Day looked around the room at all the officials watching him. He thought about the news reports spreading across the galaxy. He thought about the implications of what they had done. They had meant to save some lives. Instead, they had changed how the galaxy saw humanity. I need to talk to my crew, he said finally. He found them in the Hanbit's cargo bay, which was still being repaired. They were sitting together, exhausted and battered, but alive. When Day explained what was happening, the responses were mixed. We're being turned into a brand, Young Six said with disgust. Human warriors for hire. That's not what this is, Bo Young argued. This is people finally understanding what we can do, what we're willing to do. It changes everything, Jinho said quietly. Above the battlefield, the Hanbit twisted through space like a living thing. Young Tae's hands moved across the controls with desperate precision, pushing the old cargo ship through maneuvers that should have torn it apart. Krell weapons fire streaked past the view screen. Some shots missing by meters, others by centimeters. Shield at 40%, Bo Young called out, her voice tense but controlled. We're taking too much damage. Sunmi fired back with everything they had. The Hanbit's weapons were not designed for combat, but Jinho had modified them over the years. Plasma cannons that were meant to clear debris now cut through Krell hull armor. Missile tubes that were supposed to launch mining charges now sent explosive death into enemy ships. It was not enough. It would never be enough, but it was all they had. How much longer until we can extract the ground team? Young Tae asked, sweat running down his face as he spun the ship to avoid a collision with a Krell cruiser. Bo Young checked her displays. 5 minutes, maybe, if we can break away from these ships. That's not fast enough, Sunmi said. Ground team is reporting heavy contact. They're running out of ammunition. Young Tae clenched his jaw. 5 minutes might as well be 5 hours, but he could not break away yet. The Krell fleet was surrounding them, trying to box them in. If he tried to run now, they would follow him straight to the ground team and the civilians. He had to wait for the right moment. A Krell cruiser moved to intercept them, its bioweapons charging. Young Tae saw it coming and had an idea. A stupid, dangerous, impossible idea. He grinned. Hold on, he said, and accelerated directly toward the cruiser. What are you doing? Bo Young shouted. Getting us out of here, Young Tae replied. Sunmi, target their weapons ports. All of them. Fire when I say. The distance between the ships closed rapidly. The Krell cruiser kept coming, confident in its superior armor and weapons. Young Tae waited. The crew held their breath, waited. The cruiser filled the entire view screen. Now, Young Tae shouted. Sunmi fired. Every weapon the Hanbit had concentrated on the cruiser's weapons ports. Explosions rippled across the Krell ship's hull. At the last possible moment, Young Tae twisted the ship sideways and fired the maneuvering thrusters at full power. The Hanbit slipped past the damaged cruiser with meters to spare. Behind them, the cruiser's damaged weapons exploded, tearing the ship apart from the inside. The explosion engulfed 2 other Krell vessels that had been following too closely. Path is clear, Po Young reported, disbelief in her voice. Young Tae did not waste time celebrating. He pointed the Hanbit toward the planet's surface and pushed the engines to their absolute limit. Ground team, this is Hanbit. We're coming in hot. Get to extraction point Delta, 2 minutes. On the ground, Day heard the transmission and felt relief flood through him. 2 minutes. They just had to survive 2 more minutes. The Quilvins were moving now, all 347 of them streaming away from the bunker entrance toward the extraction point. The humans fell back with them, fighting as they retreated. The Krell followed, relentless and hungry. Taemin's rifle clicked empty. He dropped it without hesitation and drew his sidearm, continuing to fire. A Krell warrior got past his shots and lunged at him. He ducked under its claws and drove his combat knife into its throat. Green blood sprayed across his armor. Young Sik was down to his last magazine. He made every shot count, dropping Krell with brutal efficiency. But his ammunition counter kept ticking down. 20 rounds. 15. 10. Jinho had abandoned his rifle entirely and was using grenades, throwing them into groups of Krell warriors. Each explosion bought them a few more seconds, a few more meters. It was not much, but it was enough. HFY ran alongside the Quilvan civilians, helping those who stumbled, carrying those who could not walk. Her medical training had not prepared her for this. Nothing could prepare you for carrying frightened children through a war zone while monsters tried to kill everyone around you. The extraction point was a flat area between destroyed buildings, big enough for the handbit to land. The Quilvans reached it first and huddled together, their multiple eyes watching the sky. The humans formed a defensive line at the edge, putting their bodies between the civilians and the Krell. 1 minute, Bo Young's voice said over the comm. Hold on, 1 minute, 60 seconds. It felt like an eternity. The Krell came in a final desperate rush. They had lost too much prey already. They would not let these last survivors escape. Dozens of warriors charged together, their screams filling the air. The humans opened fire with everything they had left. The automated turrets had long since been destroyed. They were down to their personal weapons and whatever strength remained in their bodies. It was not enough to stop the Krell. It was barely enough to slow them down. A Krell warrior broke through the line and charged toward the Quilvan civilians. Rilpa stood frozen, unable to move as death rushed toward it. Then Day was there, stepping between them. He had no ammunition left. He raised his empty rifle like a club and swung it at the Krell's head. The creature caught the weapon in its jaws and tore it from his hands. Day did not hesitate. He threw himself at the Krell, using his armored weight to drive it back. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and violence. The Krell was larger, stronger, designed to kill. But Day was human. He was from a world where survival meant being better at killing than everything else. His training took over. He found the weak points in the Krell's armor, the joints where the plates met. His armored fingers dug in, tearing, breaking. The Krell thrashed and screamed. Day held on. His armor systems warned him of damage, of structural integrity failing. He ignored it. The Krell's claws scored deep gouges in his armor. He felt pain as something sharp found the gap under his arm. He did not let go. Then the sky roared. The Hanbit dropped out of the clouds like a falling star, its landing thrusters firing at full power. It hit the ground hard, the ramp already lowering before it fully stopped moving. Bo Young stood at the ramp entrance, rifle in hand, laying down covering fire. Move! 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 She shouted. The Quilvans ran toward the ship, their fragile bodies moving as fast as they could. The humans fell back, still firing, buying every second they could. Taman grabbed Day and pulled him away from the dead Krell warrior. Together they ran for the ship. HFY was the last one to board, carrying a wounded Quilvan child in her arms. She reached the ramp just as a Krell warrior lunged at her. Young Sik shot it from inside the ship, the round passing so close to HFY that she felt the heat of it. Everyone's on, Bo Young shouted into the comm. Go, Day yelled. Young Tae did not need to be told twice. The Hanbit's engines screamed. The ship lifted off with Krell warriors clinging to the hull, trying to force their way inside. The ramp closed, crushing one warrior's limbs. It fell away, screaming. The others lost their grip as the ship accelerated, tumbling to the ground below. Inside the cargo bay, humans and Quilvans were pressed together in a chaotic mass. The ship shook as Krell weapons fire pursued them. Warning alarms shrieked. The lights flickered. But they were moving. They were rising. They were escaping. On the bridge, Young Tae pushed the ship through the atmosphere, fighting against both gravity and the Krell fleet. 3 cruisers moved to intercept them. Sunmi fired at them, forcing them to evade. It was not enough to destroy them, but it was enough to slow them down. The Hanbit broke through the upper atmosphere and into space. The stars appeared above them, cold and distant. Behind them, the Krell fleet was giving chase. Jump coordinates locked, Bo Young announced. But the Krell are too close. If we jump now, they'll track us. Then we give them something else to think about, Young Tae said. He brought the ship around in a wide arc, heading back toward the planet. The Krell fleet, confused by the maneuver, scattered to reposition. In that moment of chaos, Young Tae found his opening. He dove toward the planet's gravity well, using it to accelerate even faster. The Krell followed, but they were too slow, too far behind. The Hanbit skimmed the upper atmosphere, using the planet's mass to slingshot around to the opposite side. Now, Young Tae shouted. Bo Young activated the jump drive. Reality twisted. The stars stretched into lines. The Hanbit disappeared from the Velrithia system, leaving the frustrated Krell fleet behind. In the cargo bay, Day removed his helmet and looked at the faces around him. His crew battered and exhausted. The Quilvan civilians scared and in shock but alive. All alive. Rilpa approached him slowly, its translucent body shaking. "You came," it said, its voice barely a whisper through the translation device. "You heard our call and you came. Why, we are nothing to you. We have no alliance with your people. Why would you risk your lives?" Day was quiet for a moment. He looked at his crew, at Youngsik, who was wounded but already checking his weapons, at Haywan, who was treating Quilvan injuries despite her own exhaustion, at all of them who had not hesitated when death called. "Because you asked for help," he finally said. "That's all the reason we needed." Rilpa stared at him with all its multiple eyes. It was trying to understand these creatures, these humans, these Deathworlders who had walked into hell for strangers. It would take time to understand. Maybe it would never fully understand, but it was alive to try, and that was enough.